Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, everybody had a great weekend. Um, Today's assignment, we're going to be looking at an excerpt from a speech by Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a slave for the first 21 years of his life. He ran away from a plantation, during which time, before and after, he was learning to read and write, and he ended up becoming one of the main figures of the abolitionist movement, which was, of course, the movement to free slaves. This movement ended with the Civil War, and in which case, afterwards, all the slaves were freed. However, up until that point, there was a huge, fight, kind of unseen fight that was happening by these abolitionists who would petition and give meetings, mostly in the North, obviously. But the big thing is that it was mostly white people. And Frederick Douglass, having been a former slave, and not only just a former slave, but a former slave who could read and write and was capable of, giving these incredibly eloquent and powerful speeches, he became a huge figurehead because people, knew his experience and that kind of thing. So, what we're going to be looking at in this speech, first off, is tone. Okay, what is his tone in this speech? Now, the speech is "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." The speech, or the title itself, is already a little sarcastic. You can kind of tell, but the idea here is that he was actually invited, Frederick Douglass, to speak at a 4th of July gala. It was a big 4th of July celebration, and and he was asked to speak, have some remarks. And he, a former slave, had some things to say about the 4th of July. And remember, the audience was mostly, if not all, white people. Okay, so kind of gives us some background as to, kind of what drove this speech being written in the first place, but also it kind of speaks to his tone. Okay, his tone. Remember, the tone is the mood. It's not what you say; it's how you say it. Okay, so what is his tone? What is the argument that he's making? How does his ethos? Remember what ethos is? It's kind of a reputation. Okay, what about him makes him a valid speaker on this subject? And then finally, what does he want his listeners to think about? What is he trying to get into their brains? Okay. So those four things: tone, argument, how does his ethos kind of influence the effectiveness of this speech, and then finally, what does he want his listeners to come away from this speech with? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the actual speech itself, or the excerpt. I'm not going to make you read the whole thing, but I want to go kind of line by line, so that because he does use some pretty intense language, I want to just kind of help go through it, and hopefully you can kind of read along with me, and then we can kind of hopefully get into some of the harder parts. Okay, so as our excerpt starts right here at the top of the page. So, fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilant shouts that reach them. Okay, now we know here that he's talking about slaves, and these jubilant shouts are the shouts of people who are partying for the 4th of July, right? If I do forget, if I do not faithfully remember those bleeding children of sorrow this day, may my right hand forget her cunning, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. Okay, so that is a line from the previous paragraph, which is an excerpt from the Bible. Okay, abolitionists generally use biblical references in order to kind of back their arguments a lot. So to forget them, the slaves, to pass lightly over their wrongs, okay, to forget what was done to them, and to chime in with popular theme would be treason most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world. Okay, so he's saying to sit here and celebrate with you while slaves are sitting in chains, being whipped every day, and being living every waking moment in a living nightmare, right? It would make me a reproach. Okay, and reproach, as is put here, is a disgrace or a bad example, right? he, as a former slave, would be a terrible example to the other slaves by sitting there saying, "Yay, 4th of July, we love America," right? So, next line. My subject, then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day and its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view. Okay, so you guys are all here to celebrate 4th of July, okay? But I'm here to give you the point of view of the slave. So, again, the title, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. Whether we turn to the Declaration of the Past, skipped the line. Standing there, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine. Now, bondman is a slave, okay, so making his wrongs mine, okay, seeing the things that he's done to him, that have been the wrong things that have been done to him, I'm taking them on. I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character in this and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July, okay? Knowing what's been done to slaves, okay? It is clear to me on a day that celebrates freedom, right, how terrible slavery is, okay? So we're looking at a very big contrast here. Okay, so whether we turn to the declaration of the past or the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. Okay, the conduct of the nation, the way the nation is behaving. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Now, false obviously meaning, lies. We lie about the past, we're lying about the present, and we look to be lying about the future as well, right? We're not telling people that, we're not saying, we look back at the past and say, that was fine. What we did was right. We look at the present and say what we're doing currently is right. And we look at the future and say, we're going to be doing the right thing then, right? However, people who are slaves would have a problem with that. They would say, no, that is not right, right? Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity which is outraged, in the name of liberty which is fettered, which is tied up, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon. Okay, remember the Constitution says that, we the people, right? All of us are equal, but not if you're a slave, not if you're black, right? Which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call into question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. Okay? After all these things and done, I stand here as a former slave denouncing, okay, with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery. Okay? Now, the government at that time served to perpetuate slavery, right? The elected officials, even the president up until that point, right, had allowed slavery to continue. All right, so he, Frederick Douglass, standing there, asked to speak, a former slave, condemns it, says everything that allows this to happen is evil. Okay, I will not equivocate. Okay, I won't bargain. Okay, I will not excuse. I will not say, oh, it's okay. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, or who is not at heart a slaveholder, shall not confess to be right and just. Okay? I'm going to say exactly what's on my mind. I'm going to say, exactly what I feel is right. You may think it's harsh, but unless you're a slaveholder, or unless you're racist, you'll agree with me. Okay? So that's that first paragraph. Okay, so now we skip down, and this is towards the end. That's not the first paragraph of the actual speech. That's a couple paragraphs in, but now we're going to skip to the these are basically the 2 paragraphs prior to the final paragraph of the speech. Okay, so he says, at a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, I had the ability and I could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. Okay? So he's saying this is not the time to talk nice. This is not the time to kind of, use nice words and be polite. Okay, if I had if I had the ability, and if I could literally speak into every person in this country's ear, I would ridicule them for allowing this to happen. I would reproach them, all right, which is to yell at them basically. Okay, I would use sarcasm and I would rebuke them, all right, which rebuke means basically, I am done with you. I'm disgusted, right? And he would say that to every single American that allows slavery to continue. For it is not light that is needed, but fire, not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. Okay, this is not going to happen, with handshakes. Okay, this is going to happen with revolution. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. Okay, the conscience of the nation must be roused. Okay, quickened, excited. The conscience of the nation. People need to open their eyes to what is right. Okay, the propriety of the nation must be startled. Okay, to be so propriety, when we're saying like an impropriety, is something that it goes against kind of our our social mores. Okay, the things that we think are okay. All right, so the things that we think are all right, the things that we take for granted, the things that we say, well, it's just like that. That must be shaken. All right. And then finally, the hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. Okay, you can't be a nation that calls yourself the land of the free, okay, and have people that are literally owned by others. And finally, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. So this last paragraph, what to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. Okay, so he's taken him to task, right? He says, to him, all right, so remember the question here is, what to the American slave is the 4th of July? To him, to an American slave, you say, this is our holiday, 4th of July. Okay, the 4th of July is a day in which we celebrate our independence from the tyrants, right? We said no to kings. We say no to people who, rule and would enslave us to another country, right? To a faraway land. And we say, we are not, your subject. We are free men. We are people who will decide our own destiny, right? That's what the 4th of July is all about. That's what this country is based upon. But remember, that was for white people, okay? And so him, and at this time, we said, curse you to England, and we're going to, revolt. And finally, and yet while we were doing that, we were still importing slaves, right? So to him, Frederick Douglass is saying to him, to the American slave, your celebration of the 4th of July is a sham, right? It's false. Okay, your boasted liberty, the thing you talk about, being free is unholy. It's an unholy license. Okay, it's not even real. Your national greatness, swelling vanity, right? You talk about how you were the great country of all about freedom, but it's vanity because it's not true, right? Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Okay, you rejoice, but millions, okay, of people are still in bondage, okay? Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery, right? If you say, liberty, 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 give me freedom or give me death, right? To a person who's literally, if they, try to run away, are killed, okay? Your prayer, so you're basically mocking those people. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him where bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. Okay, you can't talk about loving your neighbor, okay, when you literally keep him in chains and whip him. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. Okay, so And at this time, remember, we're still doing our thing to the Native Americans as well. Okay, people that that at that time people thought were less than human. Okay, that they were savages, right? And even those people didn't treat, you know, slaves this way, right? So again, these last lines: there is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Okay, so there's no other nation in the world, all right, that has done anything worse, okay, than this nation that is saying that they are so free and so good, all right, the people of these United States at this very time, not back when, frontier days, not back when we were part of England. Right here and now, we are doing some of the most awful things in the world to the people who we would call citizens, right? Okay, so that's the end of the excerpt. Tone, pretty clear, I think, right? What tone does he use? What is his mood? Okay, is he, happy? Is he excited? Is he pissed off? Right? What is his tone? Okay, what argument is he making? Okay, what is he saying about 4th of July in contrast or in the context of American slavery? Okay, what does he want his listeners to come away with? Right? What does he want his listeners to understand? Okay, and finally, what does his ethos, right? Remember, intrinsic and extrinsic ethos, right? What is his his life story, the what we know about him? How does that give weight to his argument? Okay, why does that make us believe him? Okay, so hopefully that helps. Please let me know if you have any questions. Remember, you are going to be taking notes on this. That's all we're doing this week is we're taking notes on this speech, and then on Thursday we're going to be getting another speech, but it's shorter. And it's Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, but we're only going to be excerpts from that, and it's a little bit easier language. But I'll also do another similar thing here. And we're going to be comparing those two next week. So we're looking at the same kinds of ideas in both speech, but so all you're really doing for this one is taking notes. Again, you can take notes on Google Docs document with the actual text where you can do the highlighting and whatnot, or you can create a separate Google Docs document and take notes on that. Okay, I will be grading your notes. You still have time to turn in everything. The last week of school is going to be pretty much a makeup week, so make sure you're doing this. But again, please let me know if you have any questions. I do have Google Voice. We can set up a phone kind of appointment, or we can do it over email, whatever works best for you. Okay. So love you guys, and I will talk to you, or I'll see you again on Thursday.